Thank you for indulging us. Thank you so much. That has been but a piece of our journey over the years. As I was saying to our speakers today, and you may please come forward and take your seating. I think Milton sits right on the far right. So you can come. Just clap hands for them as they come up. And we've been fortunate, like Babu-san, to have quite a few of them revisit us from time to time. We've hosted just over 110 of the executives and leaders in this place, and it's been an insightful journey for many of us, including myself. And for those of you who wanted to sit in front, the spaces are now open. So I just wanted to share that journey as we celebrate our 10-year in this place. Babu Khatev, did you know it's 10 years? Okay, yeah. So Babu Khatev unfortunately decided to take a job after retirement, and now he had to work because he has a boss now. He's no longer the boss. I'm joking, Babu Khatev. But yeah, as Sipho Nkosi said, let me work myself out of this job and give it to Babu Nkosi there. But Milton Nkosi is not only a dear friend of ours, but a family. He's also a sounding board for me, and I consider him a brother in this journey. And after his retirement from the BBC, after 30 years of service, he was kind enough to say he will facilitate these sessions for us, and we are indebted to him, and we are grateful for you, Baba. Babu Nkosi, as I mentioned, worked for the BBC, lived in London for quite a few years, and then moved to New Delhi, and he's really worked all over the world. He's married to a lovely lady, Dr. Dorcas Nkosi, and she's a neurosurgeon. I think pediatric neurosurgeon. I could never pronounce it, but yeah, it's something wonderful. It's very difficult to introduce Babu Nkosi because every time I try to figure out something new about him so that I don't repeat the same speech every time. And that's the only thing that makes my job difficult. So I just want to share a few points which I learned about him. He doesn't know, but I learned about him over the last couple of days as I was thinking how to pronounce him. Not only did he cover the release of Mandela on the 11th of February 1990 at 3 o'clock, and he mentions that in one of his documented discussions, but he also covered the Katlehong and Thokoza challenges that were faced during the later stages of before or on the midnight of our democracy. And he talks about having to wear bulletproof vests to try and cover that. And that made me think, because then I wrote something. I said, Milton Nkosi, are you so passionate that you are willing to die for what you're passionate about? And then he continues on to say, there was a time then he worked in London for the BBC. He was taken to London to be trained as a journalist. He learned script writing and editing and writing. And then he says something profound, I think. He then says, I realize that if you tell people stories, you must read a lot. You must be like a sponge. That's hard work for this journey. You don't stand and talk to people if you are not prepared. So I learned something, and I think if you can document it, it will probably help you. He was the first black bureau chief of the BBC, appointed in July of 2000. He served that for 7 years, and keep that in mind. Then he says that there's something that he also learned from Mandela, and he reflects it. He says the glory of life is never in the beauty of life is never in not falling, but each time you fall, you rise up and you dust yourself and you continue. So he tells a story about him applying for a job to be Asia Pacific Bureau, and it didn't work out, and it hurt him. And in that moment, he realized that the glory of life is not in never falling, but it's in getting up every time you fall. He continues as I get to the final parts of introducing him. He says, we are all born with goodness, but the ugliness that comes from us is shocking. And he mentioned this because he had covered quite a lot of wars, especially in Iraq. And then he mentions a story about being in Liberia, meeting about a 12-year-old called Colonel Bomplas. And he says this guy was 12 years old in a war and commanding power. And that reminded him of that, although we are born with this goodness, there's an ugliness that can come from us. He concludes by saying, in most wars, what he's learned is that he saw that there's so much goodness that comes out of it as well. They are good people who sacrifice for the goodness of humanity. And that, even in the darkness of war, comes out. So when asked what would he say to his 15-year-old self, he doesn't say a lot. He says, I would only say these words to my 15-year-old. Embrace the spirit of Ubuntu. Bra Milton, asante sana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Theo. Don't believe anything he says. I don't know where you got that from. No. But I did meet Colonel Bomplas. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Those who are in the room, thank you for sacrificing the rush hour of Midrand. I got a taxi coming the wrong way. I don't know if you experienced anything like that. I thought I wouldn't be sitting here tonight. So thank you for braving the traffic. And it's good to see Bob Khatebe made it in time. Thank you very much, Prof. We know you're busy. Thank you for the lights. We know we're in load shedding now, in case you're not aware. So thank you, whoever is running the generator and who was making the things that makes the pot makes the things. If you see what I mean. So tonight we are having a conversation with these two wonderful gentlemen, and we're going to hear their story. And I know from the research that I have done that they will inspire you as much as they've inspired me. So the topic for tonight is Entrepreneurship Ecosystem through the lens of sustainable leadership. Sometimes these things, they go over my head. You know, when you are a Pirate supporter, some of these concepts are very complex. Especially with the score that we received last night. I know for Kaizer Chiefs, it's a daily bread. For us, it was pretty unusual, very painful. I did not mean to mention this, but you know when a wound is festering. So, the topic for tonight is Entrepreneurship Ecosystem through the lens of sustainable leadership. And to my left, we are joined by Ndumiso Zulu, who is the CEO of the Masisizane Fund at OLDMUTUAL. And to his left, we've got Andile Sangqu, who you saw in the video. He was starring in the video there. He is chairman of Transnet. Gentlemen, welcome. I will briefly read their CVs just so that we know their background. I'll start with Andile Sangqu. He started this role at Transnet on the 11th of July. So he's still fresh in the job. Please don't ask him about trains and trucks. Right. Oh. Is this a Kaiser Chiefs plan? What's going on? Okay, let's hope we can start now. So, Andile Sangqu, who I've known for many years, and it's great to see you again after a long time, sir. Before he was appointed at the Transnet job, he was until December 2019 the executive head for Anglo-American South Africa and served as an executive director on the Anglo-American South Africa board. His role included working with the South African-based businesses to help deliver the group's strategy in the region and provide leadership and coordination to the group's stakeholder relations initiatives in South Africa and facilitate regional alignment and group central functions. So you see, when you're a journalist, you see this thing was written by some guy who does PR. So he is highly qualified. He's got a higher diploma in tax law, and he completed an advanced management program, AMP, at Inset Business School. Andile also holds an HCCM higher certificate in Christian ministry and is an accredited lay preacher in the Methodist Church of Southern Africa. So we're sitting amongst good people. Andile was previously Group Executive for Sustainability and Risk at Impala Platinum and brings extensive commercial mining and stakeholder relations experience from his former executive job. And prior to his role at Impala Platinum, he was executive director for Glencore Xstrata, South Africa, served also on the Chamber of Mines National Development Plan Committee, and held executive and non-executive roles at Kagiso Trust Investments. Andile also served as Director of Business Leadership South Africa, Vice President of Minerals Council of South Africa, and Deputy Chairman of NEPAD Business Foundation. Andile currently serves as an independent non-executive director of PSG Consult Limited and Growth Point Properties Limited. Andile is the executive in residence at the Gordon Institute of Business Science, GIBS, in Johannesburg, and is completing his doctorate in business administration, DBA, at GIBS. Ladies and gentlemen, Andile Sangqu. And to my left, Ndumiso Zulu is a qualified chartered accountant who joined the Masisizane Fund team as a new chief executive officer as of April, but he joined as CFO, and he is with OLDMUTUAL, and he's CEO of the Masisizane Fund. Ndumiso holds a Master of Science degree in Finance and Financial Law from SOAS, University of London, a BCom Honours in Accounting from Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University, a PG Diploma in Tax from UNISA, an Advanced Diploma in Financial Markets cum laude from the University of Johannesburg, and a BCom degree in Financial Accounting from the University of Cape Town. He did his CA training with the IDC, where he also got exposure to the deal making in SMME space as a senior investment analyst. Before joining Masisizane Fund, he was working at the Development Bank of Southern Africa, DBSA, where he was the project development specialist. Prior to that, he was a transaction manager as well as a relationship executive for ABSA Corporate and Investment Banking. He also served as the senior finance manager for Barclays Investment Bank, New York. Ladies and gentlemen, Ndumiso Zulu. I know some of you are waiting for me to say, "It isn't just a game." But I'll leave that to you to say. So, Andile, can I start with you? You are no stranger here. You've been here before. I must confess, it's been a joy and privilege and an honor to research you, sir. It was beautiful. I sent my children a message after I heard what you were saying about your life. And they were both very impressed. So, Andile Sangqu was born in Engongwane, in Etutwa, in the Eastern Cape, former Transkei. And his father used to work in the mine, so he was not born chairman of Transnet, in case you're confused. His father worked in Orkney in Klerksdorp, and his mom was a nurse. And he's a second born. And he was born when his parents were 3 years in marriage. Andile, tell us, how did you grow up and how it was for you to be at Nozizwe Primary School in Klerksdorp?
Oh, wow. Well, let me start off by extending my appreciation and gratitude to receive the invitation to be back here. I still have very strong memories of the last time I was here. It was before COVID, and it's good to be back here. And secondly, just to thank you, Milton, once again for the opportunity to connect. It's really a wonderful opportunity. Let me also extend a word of congratulations to ULP for your 10th anniversary. And I think for me, it's really wonderful to see the power of a dream and following it. I'm sure it started as something which was an idea, and you followed it through until it came to life. And even after it came to life, you continued to nurture it. I'm using this because this is really what my life has been about, in the sense that I have never, for the longest time, bothered myself about how I'm going to get there. But there's always been something inside me that has been a dream, you know, without knowing how I'm going to get there, but there was something burning inside me to say, I'm going to go far. And I kept on believing in this. And it sort of energized me with this inner energy to say, irrespective of my own circumstances, irrespective of where I am, but I had this thing inside that I was going to go far. And I want to link it to your question to say, what was it like to grow up in Nozizwe Primary School? My life was an ordinary life, in the sense that I have never considered for 1 minute that I was special. I never saw myself as having anything superior in terms of gifts. So for all intents and purposes, there was a lot of ordinariness about my own life and my own upbringing. And but I think for me, what kept me going was the family that I grew up in, the family that, first of all, instilled a sense of putting education first, to say that education is what will take you far. You know, so my mother through everything and my father, they will say, look, maybe we may not have reached the place that you may go, but we just want to say that if you want to secure a brighter future for yourself, education is the one thing that will take you there. The second thing that was sort of inculcated to me is the importance of God in one's life. That we, in as much as we are a physical being, but we are largely a spiritual beings. So it's important, therefore, in the way in which we direct our lives to acknowledge the spirit power and the spirit person and to surrender oneself to that. So in all the peaks and troughs and all of the difficulties that one faced, and I think that has just been the guiding light for me. And then the last one is love, coming into an environment where your parents show love to you. And it's amazing how that propels you. You know, small things like if you have passed well at the end of the year, you know, my mother would slaughter a chicken, you know, and you'll be told that, well, it was me and my late brothers. Okay, it's yours, just to acknowledge that. And just the excitement of having a chicken in front of you, you know, and being cooked and you're made to feel important, you know. And these are some of the things that really showed me that if I work hard, there's a recognition that awaits. There's also something about my parents that say, look, we may not have much, but we want to share what we have with love and to show you that you are appreciated, to show you that there is a recognition that comes your way if you work hard. So that's a sort of the foundational principles that sort of anchored my own life. And it's amazing to think about that now, 50 years later, to think back and say, these have sort of been the principles that have been a guiding light in my life. Let me pause there.
Oh, thank you. That's beautiful. Ndumiso Zulu. You can guess where he comes from, right? But do not panic, he's not in Kabi. Ndumiso, you were born in Nanda, north of Durban, north of eThekwini. By your own admission, rough neighborhood. You say it gives Begitele a hard time when he has to release the crime stats.
Every year.
Because Inanda is pretty tough, but you wouldn't say if you look at him now, he's smooth, ducked all the bullets to come to Midrand. But you also went to school in Eshowe. Tell us about how you grew up. We want to know, we appreciate that you're a chartered accountant, you're at OLDMUTUAL. Remember, OLDMUTUAL is ULP's partner. We do something called mutually collaborate. So thank you, OLDMUTUAL, for being part of this journey. And also, again, welcome to those who are following us online. Please stay with us. This is a great conversation. So, Ndumiso, just tell us how it was to grow up in Inanda.
Thank you, Bro Melton. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. So it was interesting in a way. It was wonderful. Not in the list because I didn't know I was poor. Yeah. It would be years later that I would look back and go, actually, we were very poor. But when you are in that moment and everyone else around you is like you, you don't know. And I like to think I was as happy in my childhood as somebody from Sandton or Clifton or whatever the case was. So I just want to open with that. Growing up was very interesting. So I come from a traditional Zulu family. So we'll just get rid of all the stereotypes. out of the way. My father has more than one wife at the same time. That's just what we do. So the way I grew up was affected by that. So at some point, his wives had a baby exchange program going on. I spent some of my childhood with his first wife, and her eldest son spent his childhood with my mom, and vice versa. So that's how I ended up splitting my childhood between Ananda, which is a township, and the Showe, which is about as rural as it gets. What is interesting is that as I'm listening to Andile Sangqu talk here, it always fascinates me just how much most of our stories have the same themes. I'm very familiar with the chicken story. I've had a few chickens slaughtered in my honor as well as a student. The one thing I never understood though was, how come if the chicken is mine, I never get the best parts? Because they always came at the head, which really seemed a lot more like punishment. Than anything else. So, I mean, growing up in Showe, it was a typical rural neighborhood. Would walk some 4 or 5 Ks one way to school and back. These days, if I ran 5 kilometers, I take a screenshot and post it on Facebook. Back then, it was just a normal day going to school. And you'd come back in school and, you know, you'd look after cattle, the usual. But something very interesting happened whilst I was in Showe. I was in grade 4. Very naughty in school, getting in fights, the usual. And this was during the days of corporal punishment. So when the principal calls me into his office, I'm like, and then he says to me, you know what I think your problem is? I don't think you're a bad child. I think you are bored. I don't think you are challenged enough in the grade you're in. So this is now June of grade 4. He's like, so what we're going to do in July, we're going to start you off in grade 5 and see what happens. So there I was. Middle of the year, I'm starting a new class. I don't know what on earth I'm going to do to catch up from January to June. Long story short, by the end of the year, he calls me back to his office. He says, now I really don't know what to do with you, because not only was grade 5 boring for you, I think we should actually try you in grade 7 the following year and see what happens. So long story short, I ended up spending 10 years in school instead of the traditional 12. And I matriculated at 16. Now, you guys can see me sitting in front of you. You can just imagine what I look like at 16, because I'm 30 Ks heavier now. And I had to go to university. But I tell that story, Bramilton, because that gentleman who had that foresight to see this 10-year-old who didn't know his elbow from his behind and said, there is potential here, and it is my job as a teacher to unleash it. I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't because of his foresight. And I was finally able to track him down 2 years ago through a mutual friend, and I had a conversation with him. I told him what I was doing in life, and I thanked him. I kind of feel like I should call him again now and say, guess what, I'm CEO now. But really, and the story of my life is replete with people like that. I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for people like those. And I think that's really what inspires me. That's what drives me to the kind of work that we do, because it was really through the kindness of strangers that I was able to do the things that I was able to do, because my family simply would not have been able to get me here from a financial perspective. And I know that's not a unique story. Because the rest of the country is facing similar challenges. I'll stop there, Bro Milton. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You already applauded, but I think you can applaud again. When I asked Ndumiso about his background, he said something really, really cool, which made us both laugh. He said because he grew up in a polygamous family, and he is the son of the second wife. He's the firstborn of the second wife. He said when he saw this series, this reality TV show on TV called Uthando Nesithembu, he said he could have written that thing for them. So he sort of read the script in real life, if you like. So thank you for that. That was lovely. I'm still very keen on your cattle heading in a show. So please prepare for that as I return back to Babu Sangqu. Babu Sangqu, there's a beautiful story which I want you to tell. As you know, I'm still a hack at heart. I love stories. And I think our audience at ULP love stories. You have now completed matric. You have no money to go to university. So you go to the mines to join your father, to work there. And you join the TEBA system and all that. But a year later, you go now to university because you get a bursary to go to Rhodes, right? But before you get a bursary, you're with your mom, and he says, get ready very early in the morning, we're going to Mthatha, so funi bursary. Take it away, please.
Sure. Well, let me just start by complimenting you. I mean, you've really done your research. I mean, I've got to give it to you. You know, I was just listening to Ndumiso's story, and it just struck me that when we have achieved certain levels in life, we forget to give credit to people that took a chance on you. The people that saw the potential in you. The people who were driven by just the ambition to give an African child a chance. And for me, I would really like to acknowledge the late Baba U Maxine Bible Portelwa, because this is, you know, each time I think about this moment, I really get very emotional. I completed my matric. I was 17 when I completed my matric. And all of us know your own circumstances. You are born and so this issue of even asking your parents to send you to university, that question does not even arise, because you can see that even to get you through matric, you know, it's been hard. So I went through that, and then I completed my matric. And as Milton has said, my father worked in the mines, so I joined him there in the mine. He was Fall Reefs Mines, owned by Anglo-American. So my father was at shaft number 8, I was in shaft number 9. So this thing, it never worked well for my mother, that there's this child, wants to go to school, and the parents cannot afford to take this child to school. So there was this sense that they were failing me. And this thing never sat very well with my mother. So she kept on trying. And in those days, we didn't even have cell phones. So we'll write letters as a way of corresponding. And then you go to a mailbox, oh, there's a letter from home. And then I'll buy a writing pad. Some of you will remember those Croxley writing pads. You write and so on, and you post. And it was the same issue as well, even with applying for bursaries. You know, you apply and you study. I mean, you're working, trying to make sure that at least by the time you turn 19, you can be able to go to university. So my mother writes a letter and says, Mtanam, can you come home? You know, just take some few days, you know, from work, and you come home. And then I did. And then when I arrived home, she says to me, tomorrow we're going to Mthatha. So my hometown is Eduja, which is about 84 kilometers from Mthatha. So Mthatha in the olden days was sort of the head office in terms of the admin, sort of your Pretoria equivalent in today's terms, you know, your admin capital for the homeland. So we went there, And this gentleman that we're going to see, Ubabu Potelwa, was sort of the DG of education. So he was known to someone who helped people that came from nowhere, who just wanted to progress in life. So we go there, and my mother didn't even know this important person, because, I mean, we're a very a low family in terms of the class. So we go in here, and it was early in the morning. I think we got there about 7, and the queue to meet this man was maybe about 30 meters. So you're sitting in chairs, so you've got to move and move and move until it's your turn. So eventually we get in to see him, and my mother introduces herself and introduces me. So the only thing that we share is a clan. You know, he was a Dlamini, I'm also a Dlamini. So my mother introduces herself and introduces me, and then she just explained my situation. Said, look, there's this child, these are the symbols. So I had my certificates and all, these are the symbols. This child wants to go to university, and we don't have money. So he looks at my mother, he looks at me, and he asks me a question. He says, "Ufuna ufunda?" And I said, "Batata, ndifuna ufunda." I really get very emotional about this. And then he says, and then he picks up his phone. He phoned his counterpart in another department, Department of Public Service Commission, who are responsible for bursaries. And he says, "I'm sending someone to you. See if you can help." So I go, I move from this government department to another one. So I get in there, I queue, very pleasant gentleman. I come in, and then say, look, they interview me for about 3-5 minutes. Then they ask me to complete forms, bursary application forms. And then I complete these application forms, and then we go home. You know, my mother has done what she could, and then a month later, I received the phone call that I've been awarded a bursary. And then I had already applied to Rhodes University, and then I was admitted. I had a bursary, and that's how I was able to finance my studies and able to complete my BCom in accounting. I think I completed it at the age of 21. And of course, you know that this is the one chance you have in life. Couldn't afford to fail, you know, and you just sacrifice because you remember how you got here. So the story, Milton, is that, you know, in our journey to success, we need to acknowledge the role of those people, because they didn't want anything. You know, they were driven by passion to see, you know, people progressing in life. Didn't know my name, and it didn't know my circumstance, but it just listened and said, there is someone with a talent. And what I learned from that is that if someone were to give me an opportunity, how you capture and embody the spirit of Ubuntu. Yeah. Let me pause there.
So that is the embodiment of the ULP values. Lift as you rise, as Bonang would say. Ndumiso, I know you want to talk about the big funeral from last week, but we won't allow you. We're generally very kind here, but not there. So you went to primary school in Ashowe, and you were heading cattle. I mean, the old mutual chartered accountant used to be a cattle header. Nowadays it sounds a bit strange, huh? Yeah. But that's the journey you travel.
So I've come full circle. with my relationship with cattle. When I was very young and not allowed to go to the fields with the older boys, I wanted nothing in the world but to go there. Next thing I knew, these things were now my responsibility, day in and day out, and I hated nothing more in the world. As I get older, I can see myself going backwards to that 4-year-old, 5-year-old who couldn't be kept away from cattle. But anyway, that's a whole other story. So, interesting thing about cows is they have a personality. I don't know how many people know that. Cows are very smart. No two cows are the same. And there's something that I always witnessed cows doing, and I never understood it, and I thought it was gross. So whenever the female pees, the male will rush, drink the pee, and then face up. And I was like, what on earth are they doing? My uncle says, son, that's a pregnancy test. The reason the cow is doing that, they are trying to determine whether the cow is already pregnant or not, because if it is, then they will not mate with them. It's crazy how some of the biggest life lessons I have learned actually come from cattle. I mean, I don't advise doing this at home. But I think in many ways, even the way I think about leadership today is still in part influenced by the time I spent as a cow header. And what I mean by that is you will notice when you head cattle, you don't walk in front, you walk at the back. The leader actually walks at the back. And I think in many ways when you find yourself in a leadership position, you are not the star of the show. It's the people that you are leading that are supposed to be front and center. Your job is at the back. It's to guide them. It's to inspire them. It's to steer them in the right direction. I didn't know this when I was 8, 10 years old, that's what I was learning. But on reflection, I think to myself, oh, that's what that actually was. I mean, it was a fantastic experience. I've committed some petty crimes. I hope this is not recorded. Because you spend pretty much the whole day out in the fields. You'll get hungry at some point. And the part of Eshowe where I come from has a lot of sugar cane fields, right? And sugar cane is basically sugar in its raw form. And there is nothing more alluring to a child than sugar at that age. I can't stomach sugar these days. I take my coffee without one. But back then, would literally survive on sugar cane the whole day. And somehow we never got sick. I'm hoping Babbengu is not listening to this because he was usually the victim of that petty crime because he had a lot of sugar cane fields. But it was really a wonderful experience. Learned a lot. Learned about birds, the different kinds and their behaviors, because one of the things we used to do to pass the time was to actually entrap them and catch them, and we'll ride them right there out in the field. So wonderful, wonderful experience. It took a few years for me to realize just how many life lessons one actually learned from that kind of environment, and I don't think you'll get them anywhere else.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So just on the leadership being at the back and guiding. So when we were covering the end of apartheid negotiations in Kempton Park, which were led by Cyril Ramaphosa and Nelson Mandela, there was a very fascinating lesson we picked up from Mandela. He said something absolutely powerful. They're sitting there, they're representing their constituency. But the constituency is not at the table. So he said his challenge every morning is to deliver the constituency to the table. Because issues arise, you have to think on your feet, but you can't go back and consult. It's too late. Okay? So he says you must bring the constituency to the table. But what you do is that you walk so close to your constituency that you are not part of them because you are the leader. But you must not be too far ahead that you are totally disconnected. So today I'm hearing this via a kettle header. Beautiful, beautiful. We learn something every day. Thank you so much for that anecdote. The other thing I wanted to raise with you is that here at ULP, we are feminists, contrary to what you see. We just had the last big event, we had women in energy. So we always have women leaders here. So today it just so happens that we don't have a woman leader, not because it's by design or choice, it's just the way sometimes schedules work. So for those who are born-again feminists, we love women. This brings me to this point, that Ndumiso, you had the joy in February this year to welcome your daughter to the world. How did that change your way, how you perceive women empowerment at OLDMUTUAL, at Masisizane Fund, which you head?
Yeah. Sure. So first off, it was a challenge because I come from a male-dominated household. In many instances, my mom was the only woman in the house. I have, and I need to count, 7 brothers, and then 2 sisters. There may be another brother somewhere, we're not sure. So in my mind, the way I conceived it, to be a father to a son wouldn't be a challenge because it's something that, I thought should come naturally to me. And next thing I know, I am a father to this beautiful, beautiful baby girl. Her name is Ukanya. And I started thinking that all the work we do around women empowerment, making sure that we support businesses owned by women, making sure that women take up their rightful place of leadership across society. It's something I thought about, it's something I could relate to, but at a very intellectual level. But I think the minute I became a father to a girl, it became very personal. It also became very imperative that I can no longer afford to have the status quo continue, because what kind of a future am I leaving to this little girl if I say the status quo should continue? Because the truth of the matter is, we've dealt as men a very harsh and hard hand to women as a society. I think we get all the credit for the good things we've done, and if people don't give it to us, we simply take it and build monuments to ourselves as men. But in that time, how many monuments have you seen that pay homage to the contribution of women? We just don't do that. Today, baby steps, but I think we need to accelerate that. And I bring that kind of personal perspective to work with me every day. Andile Sangqu talked about giving credit. I think my career is where it is today because of women. Some of the people who saw potential in me were female leaders. I sit in front of you today because a woman looked at me and said, that one is the next CEO. Something I never dreamt of. I'd never contemplated my career going that direction. Not in the list because I hate public speaking, but she saw that in me and dragged me so far out of my comfort zone, it'd probably be more uncomfortable now if I try to go back. So imagine if as a society, those kind of things stopped being few and far between, that they stopped being those things that happen once in a blue moon, and actually formed the blueprint with which we aim to transform society. So that's what those things mean to me.
Beautiful. I think Ndumiso has to be part of ULP now, Bab Khatebe. Yeah. We need to sign him up. Where's the COO at the back there? We found a new member here. Babu Sangqu, many people don't know, because you look so kind, so gentle, that you actually love boxing. Oh. Now, there's an analogy you used in a talk which I looked at when I was looking at your material. And I loved that analogy so much. Can you explain why it's important as a boxer to have people in your corner?
Yeah, I just want to once again appreciate how thorough you've been. I'm really stunned, I must say. You know, he's really researched me. So let me just take the story back about boxing. So when I was growing up, my mother was just tired about this thing of us coming back from school and not being busy. You know, you wanted us just to be occupied, but hoping that we can also learn something in terms of defense skills, but also to be physically active. So he promoted this idea of us, you know, joining boxing, you know, classes. Sure, it was very tough because, first of all, I mean, you know, boxers will tell you that you've got to do road work. You've got to get up in the morning, you've got to run, you've got to go up the hills and all of that. So that was really tough. So I remember one time I had prepared myself. Now there was a fight. So I prepared myself that, look, this will be my first fight. So my mother looks at me and said, look, you're not going. I said, why? I said, no. In fact, I want you to stop boxing. So why do you want me to stop boxing? Because I'm not going to have my child being beaten up, you know, in your brain. This is the place for you to think, you know. So you're not going. So that was the end of the boxing career. So, but the passion for boxing continued. So even to this day, I like boxing. If you tell me about any fight, you know, international, I know about it. And I keep track of that. But one of the things that was very important for me to observe in a boxing match, the first lesson was that you can learn a lot about life from boxing, just watching a boxing match. The first one was that for you to be a good boxer, it's not about you being able to unleash the strongest punches. It is also about you being able to take punches. It is about you being able to rise. It is about you being able to say, well, in as much as I can inflict pain to others, I must also develop the capacity to absorb pain. I must also develop the capacity to bounce back.
It's beautiful.
I must be able to have the ability to rise from failure. You must have the ability not to allow failure to define you. So that's the first major lesson for me. The second one was having a good corner. What do I mean by a good corner? So in your corner, there's someone who is watching the game as it unfolds. So this person is able to see the strengths of your opponent. This person is able to see the weaknesses in your opponent, which, by the way, you are not exploiting. This person is able to see your own weaknesses. So constantly he gives you feedback during break and say, listen, move your gloves up. Stay away from that left. You are going to be knocked out. Move, you know, try and jab, and so on. He is also able to see your strengths. In other words, there are opportunities out there that you are not seeing, that you are not capitalizing, which it should be. So in other words, you are underplaying your strengths. You're not playing up to your strengths. So as the match and the fight continues, he's constantly seeing how this dynamic is playing out. He can be able to say to you, he's getting tired now. So this is now an opportunity to pounce. Or he's able to say to you, don't try and exert yourself. You're still in round 6. You are going to tire out. Pace yourself out. So this, to me, is how we should be living our lives. We should be having people who are coaches. People who will be able to say, there is a gap for you. You know, you are not playing up to your strengths. These are the weaknesses for you. Other people are going to exploit that. So in other words, where I'm coming to is that you need people around you. You need people that are on your side and they are for you, but they are able to be dispassionate enough to criticize you, you know, when you are not doing what you are supposed to be doing. You also need to develop the capacity to listen to them and get feedback. So I think it is really that dynamic to me that stands out. And each time I watch a boxing match, I'm always reminded about those life lessons. Let me pause there. You can see I get passionate about it.
Ah, beautiful. Yeah, I think when I got to find out about this, you know, some of these things, you're like, why didn't you think about this? It's so beautiful. But you need Andile Sangqu to put it in his own words, from his own perspective, so that you can learn from it. Yeah. You don't all have to love boxing. You can take this analogy, cut and paste it to what you love, and start to see how you can use the people in your corner to support you. It's so important. I thought that was like a beautiful, beautiful analysis. Thank you so much. I've learned so much about that. I'll be looking for people in my corner, asking them why they're not shouting.
Yeah, exactly.
And sometimes they are there, but they don't say anything.
Yeah, true that.
They're waiting for you to say help. Ndumiso, I'm back to you. You arrive at UCT, and you're from a shore in Nanda. I mean, number one, you see that mountain, and you see the sea. Was that intimidating?
Very.
And it was very white, I think, that time. I mean, now it's better. I know you think it's still white, but it used to be whiter.
Not only that, I always say this to people and they don't believe me, that because I went to school in a rural area and I went to school in the township, nobody speaks English there. Like nobody. So the first time I spoke English was when I got to university, because all of a sudden, nobody understands what I'm saying. So if you see the kind of friends I had sort of in first year, they were either Zulu or Xhosa, or at least must understand Zulu for the relationship to work. Because it was intimidating, because now I'm there with people who come from private schools, the former Model C schools, and they speak English, and you just want to look at them and go, wow. Next thing you know, it's your turn to speak, and you don't know where to start. So it was very intimidating, far away from home. The only other time I got to see the sea, I needed to take a taxi to town. So now every time I open my window, I see the sea, which I thought was just incredible. And it took a lot of adjusting. I struggled quite a bit in undergrad. In fact, I have this story. The first time I truly experienced failure in my life. Second year of university, I'll never forget this course. I even remember the course code because it traumatized me that much. We write the test, Management Accounting 1, we write the test, it's multiple choice. Somebody thought it would be a good idea to apply negative marking. So you get a wrong mark, -1. Now, I write the test, I'm feeling good about it. I get home, I start looking at all the answers and start calculating more or less what I think I got. I do the sums, I'm like, okay, we are home and dry. I go to and at the time there was no Poppy Act, so they'd publish all your names and your marks on the notice board. So I get there, I look at the number, so I'm Zulu, I'm right at the bottom. It's very easy to see. So I look at the marks, I see more or less the mark I thought I got. I'm happy. I took 2 steps to walk away, and this is a cautionary tale about minding your own business. I'm like, I think I saw somebody got a -5 there. Let me go see who it is. I go and look at this -5, but now I start going backwards because I'm looking at the name and the student number. I'm like, hold up, what is happening? This -5 is right next to my name. So now I rush to the lecturer's office. I'm saying there must be a mistake. There is no way I could have got -5 in the test. And then he pulls out my script. It turns out I did get the -5 because now we used to do multiple choice. You used to mark it on a piece of paper. So if you skip question 2 because you didn't know the answer, and then you marked the answer, that should be under number 3 or number 2, everything else moves up. So he says, how did we prejudice you? Are these not your marks? And at the time, I'm not even listening to him. My head is spinning. -5. I have never failed a test in my life. What does this mean? I get back to Rez. One of my friends says to me, you know, before today, I didn't think it was possible for somebody to owe a university marks, and here you are. And he still teases me about that to this day. But I think the takeaway for me from that story is that at some point in your life, you will experience failure. It will be incredible. It will cripple you. But what really matters and the true measure of you as a person is what you do after that. Incidentally, the lowest mark I ever got in my life was for management accounting, which was -5. But in the next test, I got the highest mark I ever got throughout my university career, which was 97%. So at some point, you will fall down. It's not the number of times you fall that matters.
Yeah.
It's the other thing.
I also want to just pay tribute to the people who gave you the bursary, which is the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. Can you talk about what that means to you?
I'm going to try not get emotional on this one. I think whenever somebody asks me to tell my life story, I almost always open with the words that I am a product of the kindness of strangers. And really that refers to that one particular incident. I was listening to Andile Sangqu talking about how after matric, he didn't even bother asking his parents for money to go to university because he knew it just simply wasn't there. I was no different. And little did I know that somewhere in Johannesburg, probably that I'd never set foot in, a bunch of strangers got together and said, let's get a little bit of money together so that we can try accelerate and increase the number of black chartered accountants in this country. They didn't know my name. I don't know their names. To this day, I don't know who those people are. And because of them, that's how I got to go to university. And I'm very happy that the Tutuka Bursary Fund survives to this day. And I would encourage all of you to donate. I know the interest rates are sky high, but any spare change you can, it will change lives. And it goes back to what Andile Sangqu, that I'm now plagiarizing openly, said about taking chance on a black child, because that's exactly what they did. And there was a whole bunch of us. And the one thing I always like to highlight is that the way we measure impact and success, it leaves a lot of people not counted. And what I mean by that, if you ask somebody now, what impact did you have as a bursary fund? They'll tell you we had 20, 30 students that went into undergrad. Today, 15 of those children or students are now chartered accountant, which means we did very well. But what they forget is the other 5 or the other 15 that got a chance to go into university, didn't necessarily like or thrive in accounting, but they did something else. And they never would have had the opportunity to do that had the Tutuwa Bursary Fund not given them that stepping stone.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. That was powerful. You know, I've just been to London, and you know, you read about this AI and fourth industrial revolution, right? Is my mic on? Yeah, okay. You read about these things and you think you know them. You think you know technology because you have a remote control and a TV. Actually, I felt like I came from some rural town, from Burkina Faso, I don't know where, maybe Waiguya. I've been to Burkina Faso, so I'm saying it with that knowledge. It's very rural. We get to Heathrow, and there's a thing that looks like an ATM. And it says, put your passport with a barcode. And it says, welcome, Mr. Nkosi. You are allowed 2 bags. Put first bag. I put the first bag, give me a ticket. It says, put it on conveyor, second. And then it prints a boarding pass. Didn't talk to anyone. Then I walked through. And now I'm at security. I'm like, Heaven, where are those ladies who are like, hello, Mr. Nkosi, where are you coming from today? And then I start to think, what's going to happen to the ladies that check us, you know, with the eyelashes? You know what I mean? I'm thinking, if this thing comes to South Africa, we're in trouble. Because those people feed families. Okay, so those tills that you pay at Woolworths and Checkers. So what you're talking about is, this can have a huge impact. So that's why you must count. This technology, we must accept it, but with a bit of, you know, circumspect, you know. We must be careful. We can't just cut and paste. This is not London. You know, you'll obliterate whole communities. So thank you for making that point, you know, that those 5 people who did not become chartered accountants are also feeding families. So thank you very much for that. Babu Sangqu, we are going to go to questions now. But before we do, I just thank you so much for the stories. I love Croxley example. That was very cool. I love that kind of detail in storytelling. It's beautiful because it paints a picture. And I could see you going to the Mthatha office, you know, that kind of thing. I thought your shaft 8 and 9 with your dad was that was powerful. Let's talk about, which is something we've emphasized here quite a lot. We spoke about role models, your corner, mentoring, etc., etc. But there's something else that needs to be said for hard work. We saw that in the video as well when we started. Can you talk about the concept that there is no shortcut, there is no substitute for hard work? Because other people think that AI will do everything for them now.
Yeah, you know the whole issue about hard work is, I think it's anchored on your value system. I always find that if you believe that people should do things for you, or if you believe that in short-termism, in quick wins, you will think that that is a substitute for hard work. In other words, for me, what is important is the fact that what you earn, you must feel good about it when you sleep at night. That you've earned it. You've worked hard for it. All that you've been given is an opportunity Not everybody gets the opportunity. And you need to take advantage of the opportunities that you get. You may be given one opportunity, but if you excel in that opportunity that you've been given, it almost like open up vistas for other opportunities to come your way. So you start by one, you work hard at it, and you get recognized for your diligence, the quality of the work that you produce. You take pride of it yourself before other people even take pride. So it's not like just finishing an assignment. So coming back to issue of values, it's about the humility to show gratitude about the opportunity that you've been given. Because other people may be wanting opportunities like that, but we never had an opportunity. And I want to share a story with you. So one day, we're quite flippant about a lot of things. So I can't remember the context exactly, but I had a busy day. So I was saying, I'm so busy, like I had this meeting, and after this, I have to go home, and I have to prepare for this and this and that. So someone was just asking me how I was and say, hey, it's busy and it's hectic, I've got this, etc., etc. And I was, in a way, not appreciating the opportunity. And one guy was quiet, and he just made one remark that humbled me, and it sort of changed my life. He said, how I wish I had those problems. I stopped. Something that I thought was a problem. Someone was just craving just to have that opportunity. And I'm saying this because maybe you may have a job and you say, I hate my job. But I wish you would recognize that there's someone who wishes that he would just have that problem because they've got nothing. So don't take the opportunities that have been given to you for granted. Excel in them, because what you think is little to other people is the world. All of their lives, they're just praying just to be given that opportunity. So coming back to your question about hard work, for me, it's just to say that the spotlight under the sun is shining on you. Probably it will never shine on you again. It is just the one opportunity that you have for the spotlight to shine on you. Make sure that when that opportunity shines on you, you bring out the best in yourself. Let me just pause that.
Do you want to add anything there, Ndumiso?
I think I'd ruin it.
Very nice. Good comeback. But I won't let you go. Is there any thought for you about what it takes to get to where you are? That there are a lot of people, we always see people on Instagram, they look like they were born with the sunglasses and, and the right side of the face, that kind of thing. But actually, it takes quite a lot to be CEO of Masisizane Fund. It's not just value system, just the general, floating stuff. You've got to dig deep.
Yeah, sacrifice is the word that comes to mind. There's a lot of that. You will lose some people along the way, people you thought were your friends, but suddenly you don't have time for them. and they take that personally. Incidentally, I was talking to a university student along those lines last night. She was saying to me that, look, my friends, my family are complaining left, right, and center about how much I don't have time for them. And I said to them, look, whoever is meant to be in your life will be. And people who don't understand or appreciate that you're doing what you have to do to get to a better life, you probably don't need those people in your life anyway. So hard work is very important. Sacrifice is very important. I talk a lot about giving a chance to the black child, but before somebody has to give you a chance, you have to do the groundwork, and the groundwork sucks. It really does, but you're not going to get anywhere without that. So work hard. It will get tough along the way, but you will get tougher. The worst thing you can ever do for yourself is to give up along the way, because you haven't failed until you said to yourself, I failed, I can't do this anymore. More than anything else, you'll meet the right people. People will support you along the way, but give them something to support. Give them something to hang their heads on. And finally, all of that hard work, I speak to a lot of young people, especially in corporate, saying, I'm working hard, but I don't feel like I'm being recognized. And my plea and my challenge to leaders in this room and online is just think back to the time when your career was starting and how hard it was for you to find your feet. And think back to the people who took you under the wing, because I'm not here because I was particularly brilliant. I am here because people saw potential and took it upon themselves to nurture it. So the leaders must raise their hands to nurture the talent, but the talent must do the work so that there's something to nurture. I'll stop there.
Oh, beautiful. We're now going to ask you to think about the question you want to ask. If it's a comment, please. I hate quoting Margaret Thatcher, but here I have to quote her. With due respect, please keep it short if it's a comment. If you want to comment, you don't want to, you are allowed to, but don't give us another speech, okay? So think about it, and then also think about your question, make it concise and clear. There's always room to ask other questions later, but there are many other people who want to ask their own questions. So there's a roving mic. I'm going to ask you to raise your hands. We'll take 3 per session, so you will sort of note them down. Bob Sangqu already has a pen, but I want, just as you gather your thoughts, just to give Bob Sangqu a chance to talk about the importance. It's important to be physically ready, to have a routine, to be disciplined, but you need to be anchored in spirituality. You touched on in the beginning, but can you speak to that?
Yeah, let me just talk about just a couple of things. I mean, I'm sort of going to cluster them in sort of one theme. I think that if you can't lead other people if you can't lead yourself. So, and Stephen Covey talks about this. He says that before you can go out there and achieve public victories, there are some private victories that you have to achieve. And part of those is centering the self. So part of centering the self is to identify the kind of things that anchor your life. And once you have been able to identify those things, you make them part of your own constitution. So in other words, you need to have your own constitution to say, If I'm Milton, what is my constitution? You know, what are the things that make me? What are the things that don't make me? You know, what characterize my own DNA? What are the kind of things that I would want to pass on to the next generation? And what are some of those things? So for me, one of those is compassion. You know, to go to spaces where you meet people, you enter other people's spaces carrying compassion. And how you show up with that kind of kindness. To say that, can you try and walk in their shoes for a minute and just see lives from other people's point of view? To identify with the humanity in other people and begin to connect with them at that level. And begin to say that the people that you meet in life, it's not a coincidence. You meet them because there's something that they offer you, that is your opportunity to receive it. There's something that you offer to them which they may not even be aware that they need it. So just being present in the way in which you engage, but just opening yourself up to connect with people as human beings. You don't connect with people because this is a CEO. You connect with people because you see in them the image of God. And that's the basis upon which you want to connect with them. That through them, God is glorified. And you want to use that as an opportunity to engage with them. So for me, I'm more intentional about how I show up, you know, how I greet people, because maybe I may never have the opportunity to greet them again. But if there's an opportunity that I can have to make an impact to them, I don't want to miss that. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we are all connected. We one spirit that is coming through different people. And it is through recognizing that connectedness that I become more intentional about how I approach things. So I'm being long-winded, but I'm quite passionate about this because it sort of helps me to say, how do I want to show up? How do I lead? What is important to me? And what are those things that define who I am? Thanks.
Oh, man. I tell you, that's why I love this place. You get so much wisdom in one night. Problem is my brain is too small. It can't take it. I must try and remember what was said. So I'll be phoning Theo, asking him to remind me. But you know, remember I told you about the theme of this conversation. I just want you to, as we open to the floor, to just think about and just comment about the entrepreneurship ecosystem through the lens of leadership. How should we be going about it? What should we be doing to try and sort of envelope and give a more sustainable leadership value system? I can start with you, Bob Sanqu.
So I've given this topic a lot of thought, I must say, you know, coming into this session. And I'm not going to go into the notes that I prepared to guide this discussion. So I'm just going to pick up some of the headlines. You know, in my view, what I would consider to be the contours of sustainable leadership. And I'm not going to go into detail because I think we don't have time. But the first one is the power of visionary thinking. You know, you need to have a vision You know, and I was listening to Theo earlier about, you know, how this place got to get started. It was just the power of a vision, you know, and sometimes you may not know how it's going to play out. So as an entrepreneur, you know, it all starts with a vision. And I think I want to say, let's have that vision. Let's dream. Let's just make sure that that light, which really sets us apart, we must never allow it to dim. So the first point for me is vision. The second one is ethical decision making. I cannot overemphasize how important it is for a leader to be ethical, not to take shortcuts, to make sure that, you know, we do those kinds of things that are right even when people are not watching. And we make sure that this is how we lead. We lead from a vantage point of ethics. The third one is that of engaging stakeholders. You know, you don't live in an island. Whether it's employees or whatever, you need to engage. You need to listen. You need to recalibrate, because you may think that your idea is a great one, but when you listen to others, it gives you a scope maybe to moderate it or even enhance it with the opportunity of other people's inputs. The other one is innovation and adaptability. The opportunity to say, what sets me apart as a business person? You know, your ability to innovate, your ability to encourage people in your team to unleash that potential of being innovative and adapt whatever it is that is your unique proposition so that it fits the opportunity that is at hand. And then the other one is that of a systems thinking approach, just to understand that if you're looking at an opportunity, don't look at it from a small, narrow point. Just look it throughout the value chain to say how does that work. Two more points. Education. I think we need to, when I'm talking about education, I'm talking about self-education. I think you're here today because you want to learn. You're here today because you want to meet other people. So I think as an entrepreneur, you need to adopt that spirit of wanting to learn, wanting to know more, challenging yourself. And it is really that spirit that, to me, brings about sustainable leadership. The other one is collaboration and partnerships. You know, you can't work alone. You need to collaborate, either through a particular channel in terms of a value chain. And I think that, to me, if those are some of the things that you focus on, your leadership as an entrepreneur is unassailable, but also you are able to sort of use that as an opportunity to keep on checking if you are doing the right thing or not. So anyway, that's really my contribution in terms of this topic that we're asked to talk about today. Thanks.
Ndumiso?
You know, when I read Dr. Sangqu's profile and I saw that he's a preacher, I said, oh, Lord, don't let him speak before me. Well, that ship has sailed. So I'll be very brief. I think the way I think about it, particularly in the entrepreneurship space, I don't know how many of you have seen some of the tuck shops, some of the mom and pop shops that we grew around going to. Most of them are no longer around for a variety of reasons, one of which is because the owner or the founder is no longer there. So for me, the operative word in this very long topic of ours is really sustainability. How do you bring about and create something that is bigger than you, that is going to survive long after you are no longer here? And most of the things that underpin that thinking, Dr. Sangqu has already mentioned, so I'm not going to go back to them. But at the end of the day, in my experience, you encounter entrepreneurs who are very good at one thing, be it sales, be it innovation, but they just concentrate on that. they don't want to stretch themselves and branch out into the other skills that make one a complete entrepreneur. I always say this, that all the big businesses that you see today were once the SMMEs of yesterday. The question then is, how do you move them from being small and medium to being large? Sustainability is at the center of that, and the ability to move it from one leadership team to another, from one generation to another. And education is very important. I mean, one of the challenges we face, and we always laugh about this, you see school fees going off the business account, you say, but what's happening? He says, it's my business. And that says to me, education is lacking there. So one of the things that we actually emphasize on, it's around financial literacy, financial education for our entrepreneurs and their families, because some of the biggest tragedies you'll ever see in the business is people passing away without a will, without a succession plan. So the business is doing well, but lo and behold, something happens to you tomorrow, your spouse can't take over, or your business partner can't take over. So we need to think holistically about how the businesses we run as entrepreneurs can actually be sustainable and live long after we're no longer here. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Hands up, those who want to ask questions. One, two. Who's the third one? I see 1, 2. Who else? Is there another hand? Is that it? That's so unusual for ULP. Okay, they're still gathering steam. Okay, please go ahead.
Good evening. Thanks for this forum. It's my first time coming to ULP.
Welcome.
I think I followed Andile on LinkedIn, so that's how I got to see it. I think you posted it like a day or so ago. My background is a chartered accountant and a registered auditor. Previously owned an audit practice, and so I was very delighted to hear the insights that our esteemed speakers there gave. And one thing that I think, obviously, Ndumiso, maybe you might give me a job after this, but sustainability was one of the key things that I was really concerned about, but you covered that through that. So one thing that, with my experience as obviously in our society, the scarcity mentality, and I think that Sangqu, you spoke a little bit about mindset and all those things. That is it something that we can practically teach people to adopt if they're already on the entrepreneurship journey? Because if I've got an idea that I want to push through, how am I going to see that I'll be partnering or collaborating with people I trust? And it's one of the challenges that over my experience I've come across quite a lot, where people are not willing to collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the guest speakers today. I really appreciate the insights, and to the facilitator, well facilitated. Thank you so much. The name is Lundi Njomane, in the venture capital space, and also my first time here, since you announced that it's your first time here. I think the question that I want to ask, you spoke a lot, both speakers, about the importance of work, hard work, and secondly, the importance of getting up after failure. And one of the things that I've found is, if there isn't a greater purpose that's driving you, it becomes difficult to get up, because there isn't that internal bigger picture beyond that particular obstacle that you might have faced. So I think the question is more of what it is that drives you guys in getting up in the morning every single day and facing whatever battles that you need to face. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Third one here in the front, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Buyane Zwane. As I was listening to speaking to what's the first thing that entrepreneurs are dealing with, and you spoke to vision. Somehow, both your stories, Makeba, seem to be suggesting that there's got to be some anger at some point. There's got to be some frustration before vision shows up. And if I think through to Bungane's establishment of this, some anger somewhere that people were leashed and they needed to be unleashed. Is it possible that we probably are rushing to visionariness without the regard for what happens when people are angered by something? So from your preaching space, Bungan, Nehemiah gets to be doing things because he's angry. David gets to do things because he's angry. Vision follows afterwards. Is it possible, though, that we may need to be able to reorient ourselves to something that frustrates us enough to get us to do something, and therefore move away from just a comfort space? I am, by the way, a recruit of Lihle. So if there's anybody who wants to be thanked for my being here, it's Lihle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Right. We've got 3 questions. I've got a few online questions already. So who wants to go first? Do you want to go first, Ndumiso?
Sure. I'll start with the easy one, which was the question around collaboration by the gentleman there. I think for me, it's one of the things that really saddened me. And I think as black people, we do very poorly in this area. I take the taxi industry, for example. And the irony of a Zulu man talking about the taxi industry is not lost on me. You look at that business model, and in my mind, if there's one thing that we had the opportunity to truly own end to end as black people, it was that industry. You should be fueling up at black people-owned fuel service stations, servicing the car, buying the parts, financing of that industry. But no one man running his own little operation on the side can do that alone. But for reasons passing understanding, we'd sooner go to war with each other than work with each other. I don't know what it's going to take to change that mindset, because I think when that happens, when that pin drops, and we realize that we stand to generate a lot more collaborating than always competing, I think it'll be a game changer.
Thank you. It's true. I did mention Nkabi, but we will not. We won't get there. He's an academic in that area. You can hear. Babsan.
Let me just try and answer the question, or maybe not even answer a question, but just to share some reflections on both what Lundi said about higher purpose, and also what Babuzwane said about anger, in terms of which one comes first. Well, for me, I think there is an important moment that changes everything. It's the moment that you come to a realization that you should not live your life for yourself. That you have a reason for you to exist at this time. That it is not a mistake that you are here. And there is a purpose that makes you to be here. The minute you come to that realization, the minute you know that you don't exist just to get a paycheck at the end of the month, You do not exist because your sole purpose is to make sure that your children are okay. There is a far more bigger and a grander purpose to your life. That is the moment that your lights come on, because it is the moment that makes you to bounce back from setbacks, because it challenges you to say, in whatever circumstances, in whatever context that you are put into, something from within makes you want to get up. Let me give you an example. If, for example, you have this thing that is in you that drives you, you can be in the deepest rural areas, maybe in Kentane, and somehow you are given an opportunity to farm a small plot. But if there is this thing that drives you, you will be able to generate prosperity out of all of that. So in other words, whatever situation that you are put in, your light always comes up. So for me, it's just trying to understand that what matters is for you to find your light. Because once you've found it, you will make sure that in whatever situation that you're in, you just refuse to allow people to dim it. You just refuse to allow circumstances, even rejection, to dim it, because that's what you live for. And that's what makes you get up in the morning every day. That's what propels you, say, look, bring it on, and just let your light shine. I hope I've covered you in terms of my response to the question. Thank you.
So we have a question from Lishem Kai. Greetings to the panelists. What are our leaders in government, community structures, and business need to do to ensure that as a country, we are headed the right direction and overcoming current dysfunctionalities? Hey, Lishe, you write English there. Dysfunctionalities. So that's one. And then there is another one from Masisizane. What mechanisms are you using to remain in touch with your humble upbringing principles? Who wants to go first? You go first. Plus your humble principles. He heard that you are a goat header and cattle header. Mm-hmm. He's testing your expertise in the field.
Sure. So, one of the things I do, and probably not enough of, it's going back to the communities I grew up in. I talk to high school students, I talk to undergraduates, and it's really, for me, about representation. To say to people, I am you 10, 15, 20 years ago. So if you work hard at it, if you want it and you can dream it, you can be here or even better. Because I think for me, if I think back on my own story, I had no idea what a chartered accountant looked like when I embarked on the journey. I used to dream in abstract. I used to create images in my head of what a chartered accountant must be, what they must look like. But now that we are here, it is incumbent that we go back to those communities and say it is possible. This is how I did it. This is how I can support you. So for me, I think that's one way you actually want to do that, around giving back. It's not always in terms of resources. Sometimes it's your time. Sometimes it's your experience, your expertise. because I think it really stands to make a big difference in those people's lives.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Babu Sanqu?
Let me just start with what Ulihle said about dysfunctionalities. I just have a bit of a difficulty with this thing of saying, what are our leaders doing? Because we are all leaders. And I suppose maybe the right question is, what am I doing as a leader to make sure that I change the situation within my own environment that I can influence? Because most times we tend to look at the wrongs that other people are doing, and we don't introspect in terms of the wrongs that we are doing. Let me just talk about justice, for example. How you treat your helper at home. How you treat people, your relatives, that are not as fortunate as you are. How you relate to them. And what kind of a leader you are. So I want to believe that maybe if we can start leading effectively from our own spaces, maybe through our actions, other people will be inspired to look at themselves differently and to say, I like what I see. Maybe let me emulate it. And then two other people see that. In other words, let's start building these pockets of leadership excellence at a micro level, and then try and build a system that will then create a new momentum for change. And then at some point it will kick in and become more like a movement and generate its own transformation. So that's the first point I want to make. The point about being humble, I agree with Ndumiso. I do this, by the way, too. I go to the rural areas. It's humbling, and a part of going there, firstly, it gives you a sense of perspective of how far you've come. And two, it's humbling because it also shows you how lucky you are. Because it's not because other people that did not have the breakthrough, they don't have something special to offer, or you are special. You are just as ordinary like all of those that are there. So there's nothing to brag about, really. So your obligation is to say how you can support them so that you are not the only one in your community. There is 10, there is 20, there is 30 of you. Because if you start having that kind of mentality, you pull everybody up. So for me, I think it's really, first of all, that understanding to say, now that you've managed to get out of that, don't just isolate yourself. Go back there, because leadership comes with responsibility. You have a responsibility to be able to pull others out of your own community. So that's the first. And the other one is just try identify something that you can sponsor in your community. It could be a football club, it could be whatever, just to make sure that at least people, can be able to say, out of your own blessing, there's something that they enjoy or share, that can be of value to them. Because, if you are a leader or you are a role model, you need to be visible to the people that you come from, so that through the way in which you do things, they'll be inspired to say, I want to be better than him. Thank you.
Okay, one question there, another hand there, two. No, man, I want a lady now. Otherwise, my proclamation of being a feminist will suddenly dissipate and be challenged. We need a lady to ask a question. Oh, yes, they're in the yellow. Okay, let's go. We start there at the back on my left, right at the back. Who had the hand there? Yeah.
Thanks for insights and also for ULP for hosting us. I have two questions. The first question is around appointment of board members. I've realized that these board members actually get appointed through friendships. So that's also a problem that I just wanted to highlight and just hear your views on that. And second is about business opportunities. I've realized that these companies in the JSE don't actually, say here are the tenders or here are the RFQs, so the public can actually bid for those opportunities because that's how you can open the market to the whole of the country. So I don't know why these companies hide those opportunities. So for us to find them, we need to go through backdoor, and I don't think that's fair for the country. So how can you influence the business or the government to change legislature so that they can open up those opportunities for small companies? Otherwise, we are left, in kind of a space whereby we have to do business with small businesses who don't even have enough, revenues to actually service those kind of services that, small companies can, assist in. So that's pretty much my concern, and I think we need to influence the governments and the big business to open up these doors to small companies. Thank you.
Where was the second hand here at the front? Lillian?
Thanks. Good evening. My name is Lillian Mate. I'm in the banking industry. I have questions for both speakers. Bab Sangqu, I was impressed that your biology started with the preaching part of it before we heard about your academia. And the question for me is, you spoke about ethics and how ethics should be in the corporate world. But there's this dynamic or almost paradox of the higher you go, it's dog eats dog. And if you're not with it, then you're going to lose out. Outside of the point you made around the balance of ethics and corporate, how do we get back to the essence of spirituality being in the corporate space? I suppose that's my question for you. And Zulu, I think Masisizane is a beautiful word in terms of what it means. And entrepreneurship has been the latest buzzword, as it should be, because that's where our sweet spot is, and that's where we should be really focusing our energies in terms of support. What are we not getting right in South Africa in terms of what foreigners are getting right? In terms of they come and the entrepreneurship comes. That are owned by foreigners. What is it about us that is not able to make that succeed? And how are we then balancing that either in the banking formalities, formal structures, old mutual in terms of how it is? How are we sisizana kanjani ukuthi sikhule thina njengoba la ekhaya? And how do you see that dynamic working out? Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. I haven't left anyone out. Oh, okay, the back.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you're well. My name is Lesedi, and I'd like to firstly, I'd like to thank everyone here for the knowledge and the insights gained. So I just primarily have two questions. So the first question is based on also ethics. I feel like she also took the question out of my mouth. But in terms of, if you look at South Africa in general, there's a lot of people who are implicated in corruption. And I remember when I first came across the ULP platform a couple of months ago, I actually watched Mr. Sandile's video, and I really enjoyed it. And it was actually one of my favorite ones. And I went, I was like, okay, let me see if this guy is also implicated, you know. And but luckily, I didn't find anything. Yeah. But my question, but my question is, I think it's very easy from my eyes, well, from where I'm standing right now, is to say, okay, fine, these are my set of values. But a lot of people seem to get entrapped and make those mistakes. So what do you think actually makes people fall into that trap? You know, what makes, because I wouldn't like to think that everyone that is corrupt just told themselves at the age of 23 that I'm going to be corrupt, you know. And then my second question would be pertaining to youth and entrepreneurship. And I think Mr. Ndumiso, you would be more suited to answer this. I don't know. But essentially what I'm asking is that as an entrepreneur and as someone who's trying to seek funding, I've found it quite difficult to position myself and say, yes, I don't have much experience, I don't have the capital, but help me, you understand? And would you have any tips to give someone, that is youth, that's within this bracket, and say, this is how you should position yourself rather, I guess, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, law ufuni tender in simple language. In simple language, law ufuni tender. And in simple language, kata cabanga to corrupt. But lovely question there. Thank you so much. Do you want to go first?
Sure, thank you. I'll try and cover the last two questions in one answer if I can. So to the specific question about Masisizane, I think when the entity was formed some 16 years ago, there is a reason we specifically identified entrepreneurship, and we specifically said it's open to South Africans, and that it has to be majority BEE owned, and we specifically said townships, rural areas, women-owned businesses, youth-owned businesses, and businesses owned by people living with disabilities are our specific target market, knowing the difficulties that lie there, because we were very ambitious to say we're going to go where everyone else doesn't go, because there is risk. There is legitimate reason, business reasons, to not support those people. That's why they are not getting supported. But if you continue doing what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, which in our case is inequality, it's lack of access to opportunity, it's lack of access to information sometimes, right? So what we do, funding is the one element of what we do. But what really brings it home for us is the business support element. Sit across from you, we understand you need money. But what else do you need? Do you need mentorship? Do you need to attend management courses that will actually build you up as an entrepreneur to be able to run a sustainable business, a successful business? Because if we give funding today and you pay us back tomorrow and then your business doesn't survive, it means it wasn't sustainable to begin with. But I think what I found is a challenge in supporting small businesses in South Africa. We have this get-rich-quick mentality. I want to start a business today, I want to be rich tomorrow. It just doesn't happen. And also, I've heard people saying, I'm not going to do a 9-to-5 working for somebody else. I want to work for myself and be my own boss and knock off when I want to. Let me tell you, I come in at 9, I come in at 9 and I leave at 5. If you own your business, there is no knocking on time, there's no knocking off time. You are working 24/7. And that's just the reality of starting a business. And a lot of people discover that once they've already started a business, and in a few years you see them running back to corporate because they're saying, this is not what I thought it would be. It is a lot harder than having a job, because for you to have income at the end of the month, It means this thing that you've created must work. So that's the biggest challenge. But there are support mechanisms that are there, but information asymmetry is a challenge. And I think it's on us in the one part as corporates to put ourselves out there and say this is the support we are providing, but equally the people who need that support need to seek it, and we meet somewhere in the middle. So for me, those are the two key challenges in trying to assist. And like I mentioned, it's a key constituency. One of the biggest challenges you'll get as a youth if you go into business, one, they're going to ask you about the experience. Well, I'm young. Where should I have gotten it? Problem number one. Number two, what is your own contribution? I don't have any. So let's put the question out there. Why is it that own contribution is such a requirement, especially in a country like South Africa, where even people who work live from paycheck to paycheck? So where is this contribution supposed to come from? That's a real challenge. That's what we aim to address. So if you are young and you have a business plan, we will not reject you on the basis that you don't have own contribution. But what we want to see is commitment to wanting to make this business work. We call it skin in the game. There has to be something that you put out there that you risk to make this business work. Otherwise, if you have nothing to lose, I'm not going to put my money there, and then I'm the only one who stands to lose. But information asymmetry is our biggest problem. The people that need the help the most don't have access to it. How do we bridge that gap? That is the question. Thank you.
That was good. If I were you, I'd be clapping. Yeah, Babsang, I think we're now closing it. Before we call Tate Tsepo Mohoto, our CEO, to come up front with announcements.
I don't know why the questions are becoming harder and harder. Let me just start with the whole issue around how do you. I think it's similar to the question that was asked about how do you stay humble. I think it's about what choices do you make about how you choose to live your life. Because based on those choices, whatever choice that we make, it's got consequences, it's got implications. And so, for example, I think the question around staying clean, it's linked to that whole thing about your boxing coach, who is in your corner. Because those are the people that will be able to say, yeah, but you're getting out of line now, And for me, my greatest critics are my children. They put me in my place, and they just tear me apart and say, look, but why are you doing that? That's not cool. They talk their language, but they tell you the truth. And it focuses you, it keeps you to stay grounded, So I think if you choose to have people like that in your corner, they're not going to agree with you, but they're going to call you out, And I think somehow that helps you to stay connected, and be reminded of all of those things that even if you have a powerful position, don't allow these things to get to your head, because I think that's where, you start going off track. So I have those people that always remind me that to us, you're just a dad, and that's it. We can say whatever we want to say to you, and you must just take it, And they have a way of getting under your skin, if you know what I mean, And, but it humbles you, And that I think we need to have those people and to recognize those people around you that keep your feet on the ground. So that's the first thing. The second point about the the spirituality in the corporate space, I think we just need to be careful about how we craft this to accept the fact that we live in a multi-faith society, and we need to embrace that. So when we define spirituality, we define it from a broader sense and create spaces in the workplace for people to give expression to their spirituality. So one of those is being intentional about the time you set aside for that. You know, I know some corporates that do have 15 or 20 minutes to say that's your own time to connect. You know, and I think that if we take that approach, giving people an opportunity to center themselves, you know, because there's so many things during the day that drain you, you know. So I think you can really bring that by introducing those kinds of practices. And I know that it's something new, but it's needed in the workplace today. And the broader question that was being asked about board appointments and business opportunities. Perhaps I want to put a challenge to the host of this event to say there is a conversation that needs to be had about what is our national economic vision. What kind of a society that we want to have, economically speaking, and what is the individual role of each of the actors in society in terms of creating and enabling that vision to come forth. Almost a sense of compacting on that, to say, what is the role of government in terms of ensuring that this vision comes forth? What is the role of labor in bringing forth that vision? What is the role of business in that? I don't know if any of you have observed the development in Australia that in the mid-80s, Australia had a massive crisis of high levels of unemployment, high levels of debt, etc., etc. And they entered into a social compact that says, how are we going to bootstrap, you know, this country out of its quagmire? So there was a compact, and there were responsibilities that were assigned and obligations. And it's really on the back of that compact that Australia is where it is today. So perhaps the crisis can be a gift, where it enables us to come back and regroup and say, collectively and individually, without killing the free market spirit, but how can we try and bring forth something that would create shared, inclusive prosperity? So I think that that conversation needs to be had, and so that we can begin to shape the kind of an end state that we want. Maybe we may not finish it, but we've got an obligation to start it. Thank you.
Beautiful.